Good morning. It is 8:14 a.m. on Monday, December 26th, 2016. I'm Christiana Ellis and I just got up. This is 5 more minutes. Today, continuing my slightly deferred by Christmas rewatch of Avatar: The Last Airbender with Season 1, Episode 19, 18, The Waterbending Master. Uh, to some extent, part of the reason that I was jumping to 19 is that I was just looking ahead, confirming, so this is the third to last episode of the first season, and in many respects, even though 19 and 20 are a two-parter, this really feels almost like just set up for the two-parter. Not that it's not a great episode on its own, which it is, but it does just feel, it feels like there's a lot of lead in to what's going to happen next. Let's just basically briefly cover Zuko and Iroh first. We have Admiral Zhao showing up, and he's basically realized now that Aang has made it to the North Pole and the Northern Water Tribe. And before we've seen them, we have Admiral Zhao's say-so that the Northern Water Tribe is a great nation and that they would need a substantial invasion force in order to go in there. And that's, somewhat news to us, especially just given from what we had already been told. The Northern Water Tribe was expected to be bigger, especially just in the sense of that's where you go to get the waterbending master. But when we saw how small the Southern Water Tribe was, even understanding that that was with most of the adults having gone off to war, I don't think we were prepared for quite how big the actual place is. I was having seen it before, but when I saw it the first time, I didn't anticipate that it was as big as it was. I thought it was going to be more or less similar to the Southern Water Tribe. And but in any case, as a result of needing this force and just being a jerk generally, Admiral Zhao is throwing his weight around, and he goes to Zuko and Iroh's ship to demand that they turn over their entire crew, which is kind of it's a little petty because we can just imagine that the crew of one ship wouldn't probably make the difference, except unless it's your only crew, your only ship, and so it seems like there's some pettiness there. I do love though that we finally get to see music night at the on Zuko's ship, led by Iroh. He's singing a nice calming song about the seasons, and we see some of the men dancing, and it's just like music night. It's been kind of a running gag over the course of the season, and so then, as Admiral Zhao is speaking to Zuko about this, he sees the swords on the wall that Zuko used when he posed as the Blue Spirit in order to fight without having to use his firebending. And basically, even though he plays that he buys Zuko's explanation, it seems pretty clear that Zhao is sure that Zuko must actually be the Blue Spirit, who therefore managed to help the Avatar escape when he was imprisoned the last time. Doesn't seem like the sort of thing that Zhao would let go, and yet Zuko is still the Fire Lord's son, exiled or not, and just killing him straight out probably wouldn't go over well. And so, especially since it kind of just highlighted Zhao's own failure, like the reason for it. So he hires the pirates from a few episodes back to try to blow up Zuko's ship. And we briefly get, a moment of, feigned drama where we're led to believe that Zuko was really killed in the explosion and that Iroh is really joining up with Zhao as a result. It's meant to feel like, wait, can't be right, even at the time. And sure enough, it's not. Even though we don't see how Zuko survives, we do see that he's got some new wounds on his face, so he didn't survive easily for sure. We can imagine maybe he jumped out into the water just before the explosion or something to that effect. But we get the reveal that Iroh is very much just playing Zhao as a double agent, allowing, helping Zuko to infiltrate the ship so that they can get in with the invasion force and try to beat Zhao to the Avatar. It's fun seeing those two work together, and it's just kind of a revisiting of the theme over the course of the whole story, which is that in principle, Zuko seems like he's the antagonist. He's the primary character who's trying to go and capture Aang, but we've also seen how he has his own reasons for doing that. He has his own code, and Iroh in particular seems like he's got a lot going on that we still don't fully understand. But we are given characters on the antagonist side that we're made to care about, especially when contrasted with a worse character in Admiral Zhao. And that, I think that's interesting, and it's just something that I think a lot of equivalent similar cartoon shows wouldn't bother with, having there be nuance and complexity on the bad guy side. Meanwhile, we have Aang and company finally making their way to the North Pole. We get to see a lot of really cool stuff about, we'd previously seen how earthbenders make an Earth Kingdom city work. Now we get to see what it's like when you have a city with a lot of waterbenders, and there's a lot of really cool stuff. It's kind of a canal-based city like Venice or something. Lots of different locks where they use their ability to make the ice into water and back to create a canal where they can raise and lower the level for boats coming in. Very cool stuff. And we are given, at least first on our way in, just a sneak preview of Sokka seeing Princess Yue, and just thinking she's really pretty, and not knowing necessarily anything else about her at that moment. But, the Avatar is welcomed to the city. It's promised that he's going to be able to train with his, with the local waterbending master, who we see put on a show of elaborate waterbending. I have to say, in some respects, the waterbending demonstration is not necessarily quite as exciting as the expert firebending demonstration we saw at the festival a couple of episodes back. But you also have to remember how much more mass is involved with these giant blobs of water he's swirling around, as opposed to fire, which has just no real substance to it. And so there's something to it there. And of course, when we see the fight later, which we'll get to, that's considerably more kind of exciting, I think. And I keep looking at this side when I know the camera is there. iPads. Okay. So the big conflict for Aang and Katara and Sokka this episode is that the waterbending master won't teach Katara how to fight with waterbending, because apparently the Northern Water Tribe has a lot of rigid customs. And this is kind of the first we hear about it, but it's a little bit alarming, because at first we react kind of like Aang, of just like, what? Oh, women only get to use waterbending for healing, and men only do it for fighting? That's stupid. Why? But at the same time, they're not interested in defending the culture, because they say, nope, that's just how we do it. And it's you know, so it's very frustrating. But we have a lot of pragmatism from the characters, at least at first, um, where Katara is saying, okay, look, he's a big jerk, but you can't risk your training for me. So even though your instinct is to defend me and I appreciate it, you need to stay with him even if I can't. And Aang kind of goes along with that at first, but the waterbending master does prove to be a jerk. Like he's not, doesn't seem to be a very good teacher from what we can see. Now, it's certainly true that in, you know, lots of fiction, you have martial arts teachers who seem like they're being a jerk, but then they're actually a good teacher after all, because they're teaching you lessons in sideways different ways or something like that. That doesn't really seem to be the case here. I mean, Aang's making progress, but finding the process thoroughly unpleasant. Meanwhile, Katara sits in on the waterbending healing class, which she's appreciative of, even if it's not where she wants to be. She does, you know, she doesn't hold anything against the other girls in the class or the teacher there. She seems to be grateful to them, at least, if not, you know, happy to be there. And we can also recognize that, like, her situation is, it's not waterbending for fighting or nothing. She still would get to learn something else that seems, you know, beneficial. Although the idea that all women waterbenders are taught to heal makes her own discovery somehow, like, the firebending master made it seem like that was a really special thing, whereas now it seems like it's really maybe more just a training question. In any case, that kind of continues. When she befriends the healing teacher, it's revealed that Gran, who we remember all the way back from the first couple of episodes at the South Pole, Katara and Sokka's grandmother, is revealed to have been a friend of this waterbending teacher. And we learn that the necklace that Katara's been wearing, that she got from her mother, was actually a gift to her grandmother from the man that she was supposed to marry in an arranged marriage, which is another part of the customs up there. And so arranged marriage that she apparently wasn't happy with, because she left without even saying goodbye, going all the way to the South Pole as a result, thus, you know, getting involved down there. But we're not told at that time, you know, who it actually is. So we also have, you know, Aang, you know, continuing to learn, but he's complaining about the teaching, and Katara kind of complaining that she's been excluded, which is a fair complaint. So they decide, though, wait a minute. Okay, so the master won't teach her, but Aang can just pass on what he learns to Katara. But they're busted in their practice session after not very much time, almost like the waterbending master maybe expected them to try it and was following. That seems plausible. And basically demands that he won't teach Aang anymore either, because he's been disrespected. And at this point, it's all set up where, okay, well, now to appease this guy, Katara is going to have to be humble, swallow her pride as the leader of the water tribe says, and apologize. And he's really super smug about it. And finally, she's going to do it. And then finally, she just says, "No, this is stupid. Fight me instead," which is not pragmatic. What we were talking about earlier. But I kind of love it. You know, it's definitely one of those things where it doesn't seem smart exactly, but at the same time, she's just basically fed up to say, look, like, this custom is stupid. you're stupid for making us adhere to it, and I'm not going to say different. And if that means, and in fact, if I'm going to prove to you that I'm at least capable of being a waterbender, I'm going to fight you. And everyone's like, but Katara, I mean, he's going to win. And she's like, yep, probably. But I'm going to do it anyway. Because I liked that aspect of it. I mean, on the one hand, she recognizes that, like, he's probably not going to kill her. Probably even not really going to try to injure her seriously. Like, she might be, like, embarrassed by a defeat, but she has decided she would rather be embarrassed by a defeat rather than just basically concede. So she just wants to have stood up for herself, and that's exciting and fun to watch. And then, as we see, when she's put on the spot, even untrained, she's pretty good. I mean, we've seen her do a lot of cool stuff over the course of the season, but she holds her own more than anyone would have expected against a master. And maybe we can even say he's taking it easy on her at first, but there's a couple of spots in the fight where we see him kind of go, whoa, that came closer than I expected. And at one point mid-fight, he kind of says, look, I'll admit it, you're pretty good, but I'm still not going to teach you because I'm a jerk. I mean, he doesn't say that, but we know that's why. And then finally, of course, he is able to disable her because he's a master and she's untrained, which is just, it makes sense. But as part of the fighting, her necklace comes off again, and I can't help but think, like, for something that's kind of wearing so tight around her on a ribbon and not from, like, clasp, I'm sure comes off pretty easy. Anyway, but turns out he was the one who made it. He recognizes it. He was Grand's betrothed, who was basically left behind when she left. And Katara basically stands up for her Grand too, of like, she didn't want to put up with these customs here, and she went all the way across the world to live in a completely new place just to avoid them. Like, are those customs so important to you that they're worth that? And, I feel like, so, like, the end result of that is that, the waterbending master does agree to teach her after all, which is the outcome we want. But at the same time, I mean, I feel like it's a little bit easy. Just because certainly, sexist traditions, old-fashioned prejudices and stuff like that are a real issue. And the idea that just making that one emotional connection can make a difference might be sometimes true, but he kind of just flips like a switch, seemingly. And so for something that's forbidden for him to just basically change his mind because, like, oh, the girl that I was in love with who dumped me didn't like the traditions either, therefore I'm okay with this now. It's not a big complaint because, of course, we're happy with the outcome that Katara is going to get to learn. And we're glad that he's had a change of heart. But I will say that, like, sometimes some of these plot lines, even a show as great as this, is occasionally, forced to kind of say, well, it's the end of the half hour and we don't want to still be dealing with this next time, so let's just wrap it up. Now, and that's not to say we don't have some lingering threads. We, of course, have the promised invasion from Admiral Zhao with, secret infiltrators Iroh and Zuko. But let's also just briefly talk about Sokka and Princess Yue. There's some discussion that she seems to like him. There's a little bit of cartoon fast forwarding, love at first sight sort of stuff that it kind of gives us the shorthand to say that they recognize that this is kind of infatuation. But the problem is that as much as she would like to pursue it, she can't. And so she kind of ends up giving Sokka a lot of mixed signals for a while, which is very frustrating for him, understandably. We can understand to some extent that it must be frustrating for her, too, And then ultimately, like, his first instinct is to say, look, okay, I get it. If this is because you're a princess and I'm a commoner and it just can't happen, I understand, and I'm not going to push you. I'm sorry. And I like that, like, although he's definitely interested and frustrated when she agrees to meet him and then runs away, at the same time, when we have him meet with her again, he's very deferential to say, you know, look, I just wanted to tell you, I like you. I think you're beautiful. I will go now. If that's it, I'll go now. But then she kisses him. And he's like, I'm really confused, happy, but confused. And that's lots of fun. But it is still unclear, like, what's going on with her. And so it's the reveal, something that's actually not that distinct from, she says it's not what you think about her being a princess, him being a commoner, but rather it's that she is already betrothed. And that's all we know about it in this episode. But, you know, I can say that I know that is a continuing thread into next time. And it's left that way here, too, because it's clear she's still unhappy with this situation. And the arranged marriages thing is something that's been established in this area as another one of the traditions, like no girls learning combat waterbending. That seems maybe archaic and problematic, but what do you do about it? I mean, it's one thing to change the waterbending master's mind that he's going to accept a girl pupil. It's another thing to say, if there's an arranged marriage for the princess of the tribe, that might not be a trivial thing to disrupt. So anyway, we'll see next time in part 1 of, basically the season finale. And, you know, in fact, I'm going to go ahead and just decide here that I'm going to do, no, never mind. I was debating doing the part 1 and part 2 all in one go, because it is a two-parter, but no, let's stick with the original routine. So, next week, part 1 of the season 1 finale two-parter. I'll talk to you tomorrow for a regular 5 more minutes.